Welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. Hi, everyone. We'll give people a chance to jump on. How are people doing? We're talking about a topic near and dear to me today, intuition. I actually can't believe I haven't done a Wisdom Wednesday on this yet. And of course, we meet the first Wednesday of every month, talking about topics that intersect between psychology, neuroscience, yoga, meditation, mindfulness. So yeah, and I take requests. I've had some good requests. Last month we did intergenerational trauma, if you've missed that one. And yeah, I've been, intuition has been a long-term development in my life. And so it was really actually good for me in preparation for this to really dig into the science, because as you know, what I like to do, what is natural to me, is to look at both the analytical data, the science, as well as sort of the esoteric things that you can't understand or explain with scientific methodology. And intuition does not disappoint when we look at this. There's a lot of really beautiful science that we're going to talk through. And we're also going to talk through the esoteric piece of it. And then the best part of today, I think it's the best part of every Wisdom Wednesday, is I try to get a practice in there for you. So we will be doing I'd say really it's a combination of breath practice today as well as meditation to take you into your 3 intuitive wisdom centers. And yeah, see if there's some guidance for you today. I actually have no doubt that there's guidance for you, that you have this very deep, all-knowing inner teacher called intuition that wants to share with you. So we'll see where it takes us today. I love questions. I love chat. I love people from all over Canada, LA. You're all here today. Welcome, welcome. So sometimes I can't follow the chat and my notes and the slides, but if you have questions, what helps me is to put it in the Q&A box. So certainly chat, but the Q&A box then at the end, I can look at those questions if you have any. And my guess is this is going to stimulate a lot of questions. All of us are intuitive. All of us have these capacities. It's a continuum, as we're going to get into today. But I know I still have a lot of questions about it. So yeah, let's talk. So I'm going to do about 20-25 minutes of slides. We'll do some questions, and then we'll go into that practice. So know that the practice is always in the second half. So if you have to jump off, or let's say you're at work and you can't really close your eyes and do breath work in your cubicle, you can catch that last 30 minutes at a time and place when you have actually a chance to go inward, because truly intuition is about going in, looking in. All right, so let's get into this today. See where it takes us. I always love that in these sessions, we sort of co-create it. So I come with my content, and then you guys come with beautiful questions, and it's a sort of powerful process to see where it takes us. In case you don't know who I am, I always put this slide up for people who join us from new places and spaces. And I do have some things coming up just to tell you about. Of course, we do this Wisdom Wednesday, the first Wednesday of every month. We're in season 3 of the podcast. We have some amazing guests coming up. I just interviewed my sister this week, so as she's coming up, she luckily didn't tell too many embarrassing stories about me. And then I've got a retreat that just opened. So we're going to Greece in October. That one's full. But I'm going back to my favorite retreat center, and I can honestly say that, Blue Spirit in Costa Rica, May 9 to 16 of 2026. So I know there's people already registered for it. But if you want to get away, these are really deep healing retreats. So we do go deep. We use meditation, yoga, energy work, hypnosis, yoga nidra. And it's a real chance for a reset. I'm also, May seem like a funny time as it's getting warmer outside to think about going to Costa Rica, but I find it's such a cleansing, purifying place. And it sort of helps you slough off all of the heaviness of winter so you can move into spring and summer more clear, more expansive. So I'm really excited to be going back to Blue Spirit. So that may be something that speaks to you. My big course, it's a certification course, Yoga for the Mind, will be coming up next February. And then there's a bunch of stuff in the works this summer. We're going to do like a yoga summer camp for a week. I'm going to maybe do some in-person small courses. So if you're not on the newsletter, dryogamama.com, get on it because that'll keep you abreast of everything we're doing. Okay. Albert Einstein, amazingly enough, has so much to say about intuition. So many famous quotes attributed to him. And he's such a beautiful example of the power that comes when we mix our logic and our rational mind with this very fluid, creative, intuitive brain. And we'll talk more about Albert Einstein in a bit, but I thought this was a great way to kick off our conversation today. So what is it? I mean, the best definition I found is this ability to know something without analysis. You're not using that critical, analytical, linear left brain. It's just like you just know. I just have a sense. I know this is what I need to do, or I know this is what I need to say. The spidey, it's sometimes called a spidey sense, and that term is from the U.S. Office of Naval Research, which, by the way, they are doing research on intuition, and they're calling it our spidey sense. They want to start to use intuition. How can they train intuition in their troops? How can they use more intuition on the battlefield? So it's, again, fascinating, right? What we often think of some woo-woo out there phenomenon is actually being very scientifically studied and used in practical ways. I find that they can be flashes of insights. We're going to talk in a bit how you can't really predict when your intuitive download or insight comes. They come randomly. And it's often called, and this is, I believe, Iyengar who said this, the long lost juice of life. So I do feel this in myself. Life just feels more juicy and more interesting and more magical, might I say, when we are committed to listening to our intuition. And it's important to add here, follow our intuition. This is so key that when we get intuitive feelings or instincts or gut responses, that we actually need to take action on them. If we poo-poo the intuition, push it aside, ignore it, it gets quieter. So it's sort of like a muscle. We have to keep working with it. So is it magic? It's kind of a trick question. Of course, I think it's magic. I mean, I've seen my intuition work in ways that astound me and befuddle me. And how could I have known that? How could I have thought to call that person? I've had dreams that are very precognitive, meaning that I have the dream and then the event happens a month or two later. So yes, I think intuition is magic, but there's science to support that it also is coming from sort of the reservoirs of our learning, our effort, the knowledge that we've acquired over the years, our expertise. But intuition is involuntary. It is unpremeditated. It can be predictable. Again, we have no idea when it's going to show up. But so if I were to answer, is it magic? I would say yes and no. Yes, absolutely, it is magic. We do not fully understand this phenomenon, and it's powerful. and it really can add to, I believe, the quality of our life. But there's also this science that's starting to show, oh, but people who have acquired a lot of knowledge, people who have a lot of expertise in certain areas, they seem to be more intuitive. So an example that I came upon actually in all of this research is physicians. So physicians who have a lot of skill, they've been in practice a long time, they know their area well, they tend to use intuition more. They just have a sense. I have the sense that I need to do this. I have a sense that I should suggest this. I even talked to a surgeon once who said, I just sort of have this intuitive sense of what I need to do in the OR. But they have established a bunch of expertise that allows that intuition to come out. So again, it's the connection of the rationality with this instinctual feeling. Some of the studies I read, they were looking at more young medical professions or even med students, and they are not yet at the point to use intuition in terms of medicine because they don't have enough expertise yet. They don't have enough experience. So again, it's a mix of how much you know, how much knowledge you've acquired, and then allowing sort of these unconscious connections to start to emerge and come forward. I feel like Einstein, here he is again. He is such a great example of this idea that intuition can be both analytical and sort of this mystical phenomenon, we might say. So Einstein, this quote from him, he was very aware that my intuition wasn't strong enough in mathematics. We might laugh at that. But he said, in physics, I soon learned to send out that which was to lead to fundamentals and to turn aside from everything else, from the multitude of things that clutter up the mind and divert it from the essential. And Einstein said that he really discovered the theory of relativity through intuition. The story goes that he was actually on a train car and he was watching, or it was actually a streetcar, I think, but he was watching the light, he was watching a light post, and it just kind of like boom, dropped in. Now, that same theory of relativity could never have dropped into my brain because I have no background in physics and very little mathematics, minus some statistics classes under my belt. But because Einstein had trained so deeply, had acquired so much knowledge, then he reached the point where sort of the mix of that knowledge with his intuitive spidey senses allowed him to kind of create such a world-changing theory. Jonas Salk also received an intuitive vision for the polio vaccine, and there's probably example after example after example of scientific discoveries that came from sort of this inflow of guidance from, we might say, the great beyond. So let's talk about our beautiful brain. And I had to do this. The picture here, this brain, this is actually Einstein's brain. So after he died, he gave his brain to science. You can do a Google search on it, and they studied it. He actually has a smaller brain than the average human, but he has some extra folds, and they've done all the cuts on it and looked at it. So anyway, I was like, I got to put up Einstein's brain. So our brain, this is the key piece that I want to bring in here. Our brain is constantly taking information all the time. It's always collecting data. And most of the time, we're not analyzing that data, nor are we remembering that data, but it's still coming into the brain. So it's not only encoding details and events, it's also encoding like patterns and processes. And it seems like the patterns and processes are really key to intuition. Now, I might add, and I wasn't actually going to add this, but it's coming to mind right now, so I'm going to speak it. And maybe I'll do a Wisdom Wednesday if you guys are all interested in it on one of these Wednesdays on psychedelic medicine. I'm actually just completing a long training on it. And one of the things with psychedelic medicine is that they're showing on these fMRI studies that all the parts of the brain are actually in communication on these forms of medicine. And so there's just way more information and way more, a lot of, there's research showing that there's a lot more autobiographical information and memory that comes up on these medicines. It's almost like you have full connection to all the parts of your brain in such an experience. Um, and that's kind of what we're talking about, is the brain is containing so much that we're unaware of. And intuition is sort of, they think, scientists, from a scientific perspective, it's like all the information we've taken in over the course of a lifetime, plus all the patterns and processes we've observed. That is what's giving us these split second kind of intuitive knowings, that, may be at the heart of all of this. Again, I am a scientist. I love science, but I also am so interested in the esoteric, the unknown, the mystical, the spiritual. And I also believe that science cannot explain everything, at least science in its current form. So again, there's a lot of mystery with this as well. Okay, so what we do know, I've got 2 more slides on science, and then we're going to go into the esoteric piece. So I do want to say that scientists do know, or have sort of seen, that intuition is taking place mostly in the right side of the brain, which of course is the creative, sort of in the present moment part of our brain. And that the hippocampus, which is the bridge that connects the left side to the right side. On this image, you can see there's that little bridge, although there's more than just that one bridge in the real brain. It's the bridge is this sort of connective white matter. It connects the brains. What we know about the corpus callosum there is that, by the way, did I say the hippocampus? What I meant, the bridge is the corpus callosum. What we know about the corpus callosum is that it's thicker actually in women than it is in men, which is interesting. There is some research to suggest that women do tend to be more intuitive than men. Is it related to this corpus callosum that's thicker in women than in men? Potentially. However, it's also interesting. There's research on meditators, and these are long-term meditators that they've researched. And they also have a much thicker corpus callosum, again, that bridge, than non-meditators. And meditation is one of those tools that absolutely will enhance your intuition. So no matter if you're a man or a woman or you're in a trans body, no matter how thick your corpus callosum is, let's just say that, there are methods to strengthen the bridge between our left and our right hemisphere. All right, and then the second image on here is essentially the gut. And researchers are also saying there's all these neurotransmitters in the gut that pick up on emotions and stimuli in the environment in the present moment, and they fire it to the brain. And so this is this idea that intuition is also this gut instinct. Somehow the gut is picking up what's happening in our environment in such a way that maybe we're not conscious of, and it's sending this data to the brain, which is why I think sometimes we call intuition your gut instinct. What is your gut instinct? What does your gut tell you? There's actually, science is backing this up. Yeah, your gut does have information that your brain needs to know. So it's all, there's so much more to know, but I find it really curious about all of this. And then this is the piece of research that actually I find the most curious, because of course, as a mind-body psychologist, I am in complete awe of the body and its wisdom and all it has to say to us, and that the body keeps the score. The body has lots of wisdom and answers in it that our mind sometimes doesn't have. Our mind can sort of play tricks on us, but the body is always in truth. So this is sort of a classic theory by a researcher named Damasio, and he actually was at the University of Iowa at the same time that I was in graduate school. So I had students in my cohort that were in his research lab doing some research. And so I'd heard a lot about him, and he's actually become quite a large name in the world of neuroscience. But he came up with this idea of the somatic marker hypothesis. And to simplify it, what essentially means is that your body is really vital in decision making, especially when the situation is complex and uncertain. So the body is constantly giving us information, it's giving us data, which then might show up as we think of as sort of that gut instinct, or I know I need to do this, or maybe I should avoid that. So the way Damasio studied this is something called the Iowa gambling test. It was kind of a brilliant idea. They had stacks of cards, and they had participants try to win money. So it was basically a card game. But certain decks of the cards were advantageous, meaning that you were going to flip the card and you were always going to, win. You were always going to make the money. And then other card decks were very disadvantageous, meaning they were really a losing deck. So it wasn't, let's just say it wasn't a fair card game. It was, stacked here. But what they found, they were doing all this measures in the body, skin response, brain imaging. And before a person even flipped the card to see if they won or lost, their body was telling them the answer. So their body was giving them signals and symptoms of like, yeah, this is a winning card or this is a losing card. So it's a pretty, well-researched area that I find so fascinating. Again, and for me, where my mind goes with this is our bodies are so wise. How can we use them consistently to be making the decisions, to be helping us as much as we can in our life? So that's the main science that I want to share. There's so much more, but we only have 20. We're already at 22 minutes in here. I do want to mention that I believe intuition is really a continuum. So everyone is intuitive. We're all born with these capacities. Clearly, if we're going with the scientific perspective, they grow over time. Our capacity grows over time as we continue to take in more knowledge and more patterning and more understanding. But there are certainly people that have really high intuitive capacities, like psychics, right? My teacher, Deepak Chopra, when I was studying with him maybe 10 years ago, I remember a phrase that he said, it really stayed with me. He said, that New Jersey psychic? He said, well, she's real, and there's going to be science someday to show that that's a real phenomenon. And so here we are 10 years later, and, the data is growing. So where you fall on this continuum is something to begin to think about and consider. And it's not right or wrong. In a moment, I'm going to show you a little bit about our personality and how this also flows into intuition. Oh, here it is, the Myers-Briggs. So Carl Jung is the one, he was not the first to define intuition, but he was certainly the first to link it with personality. And so he is a very famous personality test. Most of you have probably taken it, and you may even know what your 4-letter code is. You might see it up there on the grid somewhere. It's a well-known and common personality test. And in fact, I'm going to actually get out of my share for just a moment because I'm going to put into the chat box. I just did it. There's a way to take the Myers-Briggs test for free. It's called 16personalities.com. Now, it's not the official Myers-Briggs. If you want to take the official Myers-Briggs, you can do that online as well, but it's like $60. There are so many offshoots of it that will still give you that 4-letter code. So I just wanted to give you that. If you don't know your Myers-Briggs personality, it's fascinating. I think it's really cool. It might be interesting to you. I go between the INFP and the ENFP. So in my younger days, I was much more extroverted. So ENFP was my type. But as I get older and more introspective, I tend more towards the INFP form. So what I want to talk about very briefly, because again, so many of you may already know your Myers-Briggs type, is that I want to talk about the two middle letters. So of course, the first letter is introversion versus extroversion, which again, most of us may have a sense of what we are. The second letter is N versus S, which is intuitive versus sensate. So if you're a sensate, if you're an S, this is, by the way, N versus S. This is how we like to gather and process data. So an S is very logical, and they like concrete data. They're very practical, they're very factual, they're very present orientated. Whereas an N, an intuitive, is much more focused on patterns, pathways, possibilities, the abstract, and they're a little bit more like big picture. So if the S, the sensate, was focused on the tree, the intuitive would be focused on the forest. Again, in terms of how they're gathering data. So that's key. And then the third letter, you're either a thinker or you're a feeler. This is how we make decisions. Do you make decisions as a thinker, meaning you prioritize that objective data, you like logic, you like facts, you're very analytical, there's a lot of objectivity. Whereas an F, a feeler, they're much more about values. Their decision making is really based on how is this going to make other people feel, not only myself, but other people. So they're taking into account often other people. We all think in different ways. Every way to think is legitimate. We're all different, but just because I am an intuitive, so I'm an INFP, just because I'm an intuitive doesn't mean I don't have logical skills. Clearly, I've used a lot of logic in my life to get through, graduate school and all of that. So it's not that we don't have both, we just have a preference. So this is sort of showing what our preference is. Now, the reason I'm bringing this all up is, again, if you're an in, for sure, you are on that continuum. Intuitively, you're going towards the right end of the end of the stick here. But if you're an S, it doesn't mean you don't have this capacity to continue to develop your own intuitive capacities. Now, the piece that I find most interesting, and then we'll leave the Myers-Briggs, is that Jung, who created the Myers-Briggs, believed that intuition, particularly if you're an introverted intuitive. So if you're in the left 4 squares on the top part of this grid here, if you're an introverted intuitive, you have an even deeper capacity to tap into the collective unconscious. And of course, the collective unconscious, we all share it, but it contains sort of universal symbols and archetypes and themes that have been shared throughout humanity. And so if you are an IN, if you're an introverted intuitive, that is much more available to you. And clearly, I am an IN, and so I see this much more. I really, I see the world in symbols. I see the world in archetypes. Now, if you're an extroverted intuitive, you are much more engaged in the world, right? You are really seeing the patterns in the environment around you and the social, cultural culture out there. Whereas an introverted intuitive is much more in the depths of the archetypes and the collective unconscious. So again, if you're an S, totally cool. And so many ways to be. There's not a good way. There's not a superior way or a wrong way. But if you do happen to be an intuitive, I think it's interesting to understand your capacity to potentially tap into the depths of the collective unconscious, or to use your intuitive gifts more out in the world. Okay. I said I was getting to the esoteric, and here we go. So this is a big question that comes up a lot when I talk about intuition in my courses, is can we trust it? Like, how do we know that the small, still voice within is actually telling us the truth? And my answer is actually, we don't. Intuition is not infallible, but logic is also not infallible, right? So there's no foolproof way of creating good decisions or right decisions. Maybe there is no wrong decision. Maybe decisions are just, we're just at different choice points all the time. But here's some things to consider. Like, if you're really like, I'm wanting to develop my intuition and wanting to trust it, these are some questions I want to pose to you. How relaxed and centered are you? Again, our intuition comes online when our nervous system is in a regulated state, and we're centered in our own being, right? So if we're rushing through the day, doesn't mean our intuition can't break through, but it's going to come in much more commonly in the quiet, in the spaciousness, in the rest. How practiced are you? So, if you're really practiced in a field of study, or you're really, a lot, or you've just been on the planet a long time, you've got a lot of experience under your belt, which means your intuitive impulses are probably pretty strong. How self-aware are you? I mean, we have to have a sense of self-awareness to be able to even witness the intuitive things that might come through. We need to be able to watch and sense and feel those. And then, are you okay with making mistakes, or do you need guarantees and sure things? Because believe me, I know better than anyone. I'm always listening to my intuition. I'm always going in. I'm always trying to get a sense of what I feel about a situation or a person, or whatever I'm facing. But it's not always right. So we have to be willing to sort of be okay with good portion of the time my intuition is really giving me the clear right answer. But there are times, I must have been some miswiring here, or some misfiring. I didn't quite get it. And then my last couple questions are, do you need a lot of advice? Do you always look to others? I think this is one thing that will really silence our intuition, is that we're constantly going to other people. Should I do this? What do you think? What do you think I need to do? Versus, no, I'm actually just going to go in and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to just be present for what my own inner teacher is trying to speak to me about. And then, without a doubt, fear, guilt, and shame. I mean, those are sort of the bane of all of our human existence. I was talking to a dear friend this week, and she was reading something about how fear, guilt, and shame are what really keep us from going to these higher, expansive, enlightened spaces. So fear is going to shut down intuition really quickly, as is guilt and shame. So, if you are I'm in such a low place, I'm overwhelmed, but I think my intuition is telling me this, question it a little bit more. Whereas if you're in a really solid, steady, clear, relaxed place, and you're getting a strong intuitive urge, I would trust that more than when it comes from a frantic, overwhelmed, sort of shrouded place. And then, this is probably to sum up the whole conversation today. Combining intuition with analytical thinking is often the best approach. Intuition offers quick insights, while analysis helps verify and refine them. So we need them both. We have a left brain and we have a right brain, and we have a beautiful bridge between the two of them. But if you're someone who stays away from intuition, I'm going to encourage you to work on developing it. And if you're someone who only uses intuition, maybe consider bringing in some logic or even analyzing my intuition. Like, does it work most of the time, or do I need to, question it from time to time? All right, so what do the yogis say? I got to get this in because, this is my love, the yoga. Yogananda, intuition is soul guidance. So here we're going to these bigger spaces, right? Intuition is your soul speaking to you. But again, Yogananda says too, we need a calm mind. It's only going to naturally come up when the mind is calm. This is a crazy book, an amazing book. I read it years ago. I just pulled it off my bookshelf here. This book talks about, essentially from the Yoga Sutras, one of the core yoga texts. The Yoga Sutras essentially say that if we are willing to sit still and quietly, if we're willing to pay attention to our mind, practice diligently, then we will gain supernormal powers. These advanced capacities that the yogis call the siddhis are not magical. They are ordinary capacities that all of us have. In fact, I remember Dr. Chopra saying that in some of my trainings, that like, we have so many capacities that are untapped, you can't even fathom it. We are just so distracted to be able to access them on a regular basis. So I put in the box or on the slide some of the different siddhis: telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, super strength. So these are talked about in the sutras. And what the sutras say is that, again, if we're sitting quietly, paying attention to the mind, practicing diligently over a long period of time, these gifts that, again, we think of as supernormal, become highly reliable and under complete conscious control. So I will say that some of these siddhis I've experienced, but in no way are they reliable for me or under conscious control. Now, we have to end with the last part of this slide, which there is danger, the sutras say, that we need to know that these things could come online with practice, right? With meditation, with yoga, with breath work. But that if they do, or if and when they do, we need to avoid the invitation to display or identify with them. So we don't want to believe that we are somehow special or go into some kind of ego or pride or arrogance, which is going to then impede our progress on the path. So this book kind of blows my mind. And the beauty of this book is that this researcher not only took the siddhis that were described in the sutras, but then sort of broke down what science is currently out there to support these siddhis. So, takeaway point, we have so much capacity in us, so much more than we could ever imagine, and it's there for us. And it can be unlocked through practices like meditation and yoga. The yogis also talked about how there are 3 sort of seats of intuition in the body. One is at the base of the tailbone, sort of base of the spine. This is where we get vital life force intuition. The intuitive center in our heart is all about love, and the intuitive center in our third eye is all about higher vision. So the work we're going to do in our exploration today is going to be all about these seats of intuition. And these are all the ways you can access intuition. We could probably talk a lot more about this, but let me clarify. Most of these are ones you will fully understand. Books. So what I mean by this is you pull a book off the shelf and you open it and you're like, okay, what do I need to read on this page? This has happened to me so many times. I'll be thinking, okay, I need to teach a class or I need to find something, and boom, boop, there it is. So there's many ways to really tap into this intuitive process. And last but not least, when you hear it, you got to act on it. So that's my encouragement as we go into this practice, that if you get any information today, please, please, please act on it. Okay, that took longer than I thought. So I think what I'm going to do, yeah, someone asked about, I see it in here, someone asked about the name of the podcast, Tend Her Wild. Yeah, vagus nerve. I'm seeing a question about vagus nerves, the 10th cranial nerve that runs and sort of innervates the throat and the digestive system and all the way down into the gut. The vagus nerve is definitely more connected to clearly our nervous system response. And I think probably when we have good vagal tone and we can settle into that parasympathetic nervous system response, then is when we can open to intuition. So again, if you're in fight, flight, freeze, intuition is much harder to connect to. So I think it is connected in that way, is that we need to be in a calm nervous system space. The part of the brain, and I was going to mention this and I didn't talk too much about, is the pineal gland. Yogis really talk a lot about the pineal gland, but there's some, although the science isn't robust, there's some idea that it's connected to our intuition and that it releases a substance very similar to DMT, which is somewhat of a psychedelic. So it puts us in that very receptive space to receive. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, let's practice. Let's go into, got a good 20 minutes here to do a little bit of a practice. So I'd like you, it's going to be breath practice as well as some meditation. And again, it's recorded. So if you're like, not a good time, come back to us later. And thanks for joining today. But if you're ready to practice, this is the real stuff, right? This is when we really get to find our intuition. I encourage you to find a seat and allow the eyes to close and just, give yourself that permission that for the next 20 minutes, I am allowing myself to connect to my own depths. I am open to be in deeper communication and connection with my intuition, my inner teacher. And so as we begin, just let the body move a little bit, perhaps forward and back, or just a little swaying side to side so that you can really locate what I often call the sweet spot. Find that sweet spot somewhere in the middle of your rocking where you're like, this is where I feel most expansive. Often at the place where our weight is settled over the sit bones. The spine is nice and elongated. Feel your feet on the ground. Your hands can be resting gently in the lap, or have your palms face down on your thighs, the thumb and the pointer finger lightly touching. So in our practice today, we're going to visit our 3 intuitive centers and breathe into these energetic centers in the body and just stay open to any information, image, color, memory, feeling that could possibly arise. So starting all the way down in the pelvis, the base of the spine, just letting your attention, your focus drop down all the way to your root. If it helps, you could even place your hands on your abdomen or your pelvis, just as a way to have that visceral touch, that anchoring down into the depths of your being. And now begin to direct breath into the pelvis and the low belly. So deepening your breath. Sometimes call this diaphragmatic breathing. Alternatively, so you can stay with the diaphragmatic breathing. Or alternatively, you could do, and I'll guide you through this here in a moment, just about a 30-second practice of Kapalabhati breath. Kapalabhati breath is a forceful exhale through the nose, almost like you're blowing a candle out with your nose. As the same time that you're sort of feeling a pumping of the belly. So again, we're getting a lot of stimulation, energy movement, purification down in the base, down in the belly. So if you'd like to join me for that, I'm going to guide you through it. Otherwise, stay with your deep diaphragmatic breaths deep down in the belly, in the pelvis. All right, take a nice deep breath in. Release about 3/4 of the breath, and then it's that forceful exhale through the nose. Keep going, that forceful exhale, just a couple more seconds here. Really feeling that pumping of the belly, maybe experiencing some heat starting to lift in the body. Start to bring it to a close now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now releasing any shaping of the breath that you still might be doing, and just letting yourself really feel and receive sensation, awareness right in the base of the body. So as you stay down there in your root, I'd like you to bring to mind something that you are feeling challenged by right now. Something that is befuddling you a bit or distressing you, that you would like to receive some guidance on. And so as we continue to move through these 3 wisdom centers, just stating that intention, I would like some guidance on. I'd like to be in deeper connection with my inner teacher on this particular matter. And so here we are in this first wisdom center, way deep down in the pelvis. And let's just stay for a couple moments of silence. Just listening, receiving, seeing if there's anything that this wisdom center in the pelvis, which holds your vital life force, has for you today. All right, let's move our attention now up to the next wisdom center, which is the center of your heart. And again, if it's helpful for you to place your hands on your heart, you might place your right hand on your heart, your left hand on top, thumbs lightly touch. Or if it feels better just to keep your hands in the lap, by all means, feel the space to do that. So now we bring our full attention and awareness into the wisdom center of the heart, which is, of course, the seat of love and compassion. It's also the space where our human self meets our higher self. And so we'll move now into a breath practice to really clear and attune us to the wisdom that's contained here in the heart. So this is a 2-breath practice. We'll repeat it 3 times. So before we go into the practice, I'd like you just to imagine now that there's just a sea of goodness and love and benevolence and light and ease and freedom surrounding you. And in particular, feel into this benevolence, this goodness, this light right at the crown of the head. And we start the breath practice now. As you inhale, imagine that light traveling down the crown, down through the central channel into the heart. And as you exhale, let that love and that light that you brought in begin to expand in the heart space. And now on this next inhale that you make, it's as if any darkness or contraction around the heart lifts up on that inhale to the crown of the head. And then on the exhale, you let it go, releases. So we'll do this 2 more times, inhaling light, compassion, love, goodness down through the crown into the heart. As you exhale, the heart literally expands. On this next inhale, any darkness, fear, contraction around the heart, it effortlessly lifts up to the crown. And as you exhale, it's released. You've let it go. One more round, drawing that light in through the crown, down into the heart. As you exhale, let it expand. This next inhale is when any darkness, contraction, sadness around that heart, grief, it lifts up to your crown, and then really extend this exhale. Really visualize and see yourself letting go of whatever heaviness has been stored around that beautiful heart. And then release the breath practice and just be in your heart. Just pure presence in the heart. Communing with your wisdom center here. Again, this challenge that you are working with, this intention that you'd like some guidance on, is there any information that the heart has for you in this moment. Where the wisdom center of the heart is the seat of love. It's the seat of compassion. All right, moving up to this third wisdom center, the third eye, the space between the eyebrows. Working our way into a little bit of Nadi Shodhana variation of it. So in this variation, instead of using the typical mudra, your pointer middle finger can come right between your eyebrows. So you're touching in literally with your pointer and middle finger of your right hand into your third eye. Your thumb then will close off your right nostril and your ring finger will close off your left. So in this variation, we're going to just be breathing up the left nostril and down the right. And then you'll breathe up the left again and down the right. So just bringing sort of our guidance and our intuition into that left nostril, which is the intuitive side. All right, when you're ready, release all the air in the lungs, closing off that right nostril, inhaling up the left. Imagining that breath and that energy traveling right into the center of the brain. Pause the breath at the top, and then you'll exhale down the right nostril. And then inhaling up the left side again. And down the right. As you reach the top of the breath and you hold the breath in for a moment, really feel the energy sort of coalescing right in that space of the third eye. So we're now tapping into the third wisdom center, which is all about higher mind, higher vision. To do 2 more rounds, breathing up the left nostril and breathing down the right. Eventually letting the hands release back down to your lap and staying with your attention right in the space of the third eye. And the space of higher visioning. Is there a message to you today from this intuitive wisdom center in your body, this third eye space? Is there a message for you? Now bringing your attention all the way back down to the root. We'll work here to Bring awareness from the root to the crown. So now moving energy and breath from the base of the spine as you inhale up the spine, traveling through pelvis, vital life force, traveling up through the heart, love, traveling up through the third eye, higher vision, all the way to the crown. And then as you exhale, you go back down from crown, down through that third eye, through the heart, down to the pelvis. So just a couple of times now, bringing energy from your root up through those 3 wisdom centers, all the way to the crown. And then from the crown, all the way back down to the pelvis. Connected now to all 3 of these wisdom centers, your vital life force, love, and higher visioning. Again, what do you need to know about this challenge in your life or this thing you're having some questions about? Is there anything else you need to know now that you're tapped into all 3 of these powerful intuitive centers? Whatever you received or whatever space and silence came to you, let's bring our hands together now in front of the heart. Just a little bowing of the head. To end here, draw your hands up so now your thumbs touch in right at that third eye. So we honor this wisdom center of higher vision. Drawing hands now down in front of the heart, we honor this wisdom center of love. And then hands coming all the way down to the abdomen or even down to the pelvis, just honoring all that vital life force that's contained right in the base of your spine and all the wisdom it contains. And slowly coming back, if it's helpful for you to rub your palms together just as a way to sort of re-energize your system, you can certainly do that. And placing those hands over your eyes, blinking the eyes open, and then eventually releasing your hands. All right, friends, I went a little bit over, but I'm going to stay on for a couple of minutes. So, sometimes after we come out of something like that, what I might encourage you to do is if you've got any insights, please write them down immediately. They do leave very quickly. So it might be in your best interest to turn off the video and write a little bit. Could also be in your best interest. You're in a great space to continue meditating. You could certainly turn off the video and go meditate. But yeah, if there's anything you want to ask or anything you want to, thank you for sharing in the chat, these lovely comments. Margaret's intuition told her to cry more. Yes, Margaret. It's one of my mantras, cry harder, just go for it. Yeah. Maureen had clarity at each of our energy centers, confirmation of what I know and how to move forward. That's it, Maureen, that's it. That's why we do this. Lynn, the recording of this will be on the Dr. Yoga Mama YouTube channel. And you were signed up for this class. And so tomorrow we'll send out an email with this recording. I'm also going to include in that email, I did a yoga practice on Tuesday morning in my class on these 3 seats of intuition. It was a really powerful class. So if you want to add some asana in as well, I'll include that in the email, sort of the recap of what we talked about today. So that'll go out probably sometime tomorrow. So yeah, Tina, glad it was powerful. Glad you guys got something out of it. I was feeling so much at the end because whenever we meditate together, you can really tap into that field. So I honestly didn't want to come out of it. And then I looked at the clock. I was like, oh, it's 1:03. People have to get back to whatever they're doing today. So, all right, everyone, join me next week, or not next week, next month. Oh, I see someone, if you're still on, I've got one question that I didn't get to. So I want to do this for whoever the anonymous attendee is who asked this question. And it'll be on a recording as well. Okay, so the question is, can you talk more about the ways to tap into intuition? Yes, let me just do that really quick and then I will get off. All right, I gave this short shrift because I was looking at my time. So these are all ways to access it. Meditation, yoga are really key. Silence. I just was on a 5-day silent retreat and the amount of intuition that came online was phenomenal for me. Dreams are considered direct messages from the soul. And so working with dreams, attempting to remember the dreams, writing your dreams down are great. A pendulum, you can certainly buy these at New Age bookstores, but you can also just use a necklace. So anything that's got a weight at the end of a cord. And the way I actually use a pendulum, I use a pendulum, not all the time, but I have used it in the past. A pendulum, so let's say you're trying to make a choice about 3 different things. A pendulum, you would write those 3 things on a piece of paper and then hold the pendulum over each of those 3 things and see if the pendulum moves. If pendulum moves in a circle, it's often a yes. If it moves back and forth, it's often a no, although you test it first, right? So how does your pendulum want to move for you? So the best way to test it is, my name is Betsy. And if your name is Betsy, it'll say yes. If your name is not Betsy, it'll say no. And so pendulum is, again, it's just a chance to tap into these higher knowings. And there's lots of books about using a pendulum. Oracle cards. So again, there's hundreds of oracle decks. How do they work? They're thought to work on intuition. So you lay out all these cards, you ask a question, you pull a card, the one that speaks to you the most, and then the meaning of that card may have some messaging for you about the question you posed. Again, the more you work with these tools, the more natural they come, and I think the deeper the answers become as well. Muscle testing. Muscle testing is another word for it is applied kinesiology. And it is essentially allowing your body to tell you yes or no. So pendulum, there's something, you're using a tool. Muscle testing is using your body. So I use the sway technique. So again, you test it. My name is Betsy. When I do that, I sort of feel a movement forward. So yes is often this like sort of leaning forward, expanding forward. No, my name is Matt, contraction back. No, it's not. And so then you can start to use muscle testing. You can ask your body questions. I do this every day, multiple times a day. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Again, it's one of my favorite tools. I talked about the book, sort of like asking a question, opening a book, seeing what comes. And then creativity, drawing, painting, all of these things to sort of get us more into that right brain. So I hope that answers it. I apologize that I didn't spend a little bit more time on that slide, but I think that should cover it. Thank you for all the beautiful questions. Thank you, all of you who stayed on. Rebecca, I did my silent retreat in Idaho and it was amazing. 5 days in silence, noble silence. You didn't even look at people. So it was a really big internal space, but I've never done 5 days in silence my whole life, and yeah, I'll definitely do it again. It was really good. Okay, everyone, thanks for your presence. We'll see you next month.